What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's my watch list ahead of game week 2. So taking a look at the first week, which players caught the eye, who has good fixtures coming up, and who maybe has slightly better minutes than we were expecting, or possibly a combination of all three of those things, and are now potential transfer targets over the next few weeks. Not necessarily coming in straight away, but players that I need to keep an eye on. So if you enjoy this type of video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you're new around here as well. Just before we jump into the first video, I wanted to talk about the sponsor of today's video, which is Fantasy Football Scout. If you didn't sign up in pre-season, it's definitely not too late to do so. There is a handy link in the description below if you want to become a premium member and basically make use of all these great tools that you see on the side. The one I'm going to show you today is the Rate My Team tool. Now, I talked about this a little bit pre-season. The great thing is now you don't have to build your whole team, so you can get your FPL ID. It explains how to do that there. I already know mine, and it'll basically populate your team and show you what your scores are, or predicted scores are, over the next few weeks. You can make it a shorter range of game weeks or a longer one. I've got the next 6 game weeks, and it gives you an idea of not only players that are potentially not nailed on, like Cucurella, who I obviously know about, who I might want to use a transfer on soon, but also which weeks you're likely to score low, which might mean that, you know, additional transfers are better in those weeks, right? And you can just look at the tool and give you an indication. And if you go on the players, it will show you their predicted scores again over certain game weeks, and you can make it so you're looking at particular positions, certain clubs, or certain prices as well. So if I wanted to swap Diaz out, for example, because I wasn't happy with him, I could just go for max price 8 million, position midfielders, and it would show me over the next few weeks who is likely to score the most points, and obviously you go from there. So it's a really handy tool. There's loads of others on the left-hand side as well that you can see, which you can make use of as you manage your team through the season. If you want to sign up and give that a go, click that link in the description below and become a premium member. So first up has to be Darwin Nunez, another impressive performance in a Liverpool shirt. I think, by the way, it was fair not to start with him in our Game Week 1 squads because we weren't sure whether he would be in the first 11 for Fulham, and he wasn't. And I know people say things like, well, he can come off the bench and, you know, get something against tired legs, or he can always get you a goal or an assist off the bench. But ultimately in FPL, you want to pick players that are going to start. The reason that Nunez is on the watch list is because I think that's going to happen pretty soon, and I think it could be against Crystal Palace. I just think Firmino offers something different to all the other forwards at the club in terms of control, playing that false 9 position, obviously presses from the front. But I think we saw Jota keep Firmino out the team quite a lot last year, and I think Nunez is going to do the same. I know obviously Klopp is easing him in, and he's not guaranteed to start against Palace, which is probably why I won't rush to rip my team up to get him, but I think him starting quite regularly is going to happen soon. And I even think, I know this could be famous last words, but even when Jota is back, I think Nunez is going to get more starts than both him and Firmino. And okay, he might miss the odd game, but I'm not sure how often that's going to happen. So I think he looks good. I don't think we need to rip up our teams in Game Week 2 to get him in. Most people will not have left $1 million in the bank to upgrade Jesus, for example. And I know in my own team, I'm not keen on selling Jesus yet anyway. I know he blanked in the first game, but that was Arsenal's hardest game of the first 4. I think Leicester at home is decent. Bournemouth and Fulham are definitely good as well. So there are points to come for Jesus. Obviously, for a lot of us, we also have to free up a Liverpool spot. So taking hits to remove Robertson or Diaz after one game, which does not seem like the greatest use of transfers. But for anyone that is considering him, for anyone that's already got him as well, or has a good route to him, he could be a very, very good differential. I know he's owned by 22.8% of teams, which seems high, but I can tell you now, those managers that are like engaged, that you know are going to be playing at the end of the season, a lot of them will not have gone for Darwin Nunez, so it could be a good time to kind of get ahead. And to be honest, I don't really see any of the fixtures on screen that difficult. I think Crystal Palace is arguably Liverpool's toughest game over the next 6. I know I've got Man United colour-coded slightly harder, but if they have another performance like they did against Brighton, I will downgrade that to the same as Crystal Palace, to the same as Newcastle, because that's just the state Man United are in right now. And Liverpool, if Man United play like they did against Brighton, Liverpool will tear them apart. So I think Nunez looks really good. I still think that £9 million price point is a little bit tricky, right? Because there are a lot of £8 million midfielders that could do just as well as him. Yes, he came on and got 9 points. He's not going to continue to get points off the bench. We need to see those starts. And even if that happens, the likes of Diaz, Kulusevski, Foden, they could do really well as well. So I like him. He's on the watch list. watchlist, I can definitely see the first lot of wildcards switching to a 4-3-3, and I certainly don't think he's a bad pick, but in terms of ripping up our teams in Game Week 2 to get him, probably not for me. So I'm quite keen on getting Phil Foden into my squad, preferably sooner rather than later because of that Bournemouth fixture. The problem is I don't really like making transfers in Game Week 2 unless I absolutely have to. I'm sure some of you are in a similar boat with Luis Diaz and you're considering maybe moving him on. Not that he played badly or anything like that, but obviously there is that kind of aggressive transfer strategy where you could go for a Man City midfielder against Bournemouth instead. It is worth saying that over the next 3 weeks at least, Man City and Liverpool's fixtures are very similar. They've both got to play Bournemouth at home. City play them in Game Week 2. Liverpool play them in Game Week 4. They've both got to play Crystal Palace at home. Liverpool are playing them this week. Man City play them in Game Week 4. And to be honest, in Game Week 3, where City play Newcastle away, Liverpool are playing Man United away, and I think right now that fixture difficulty is not too dissimilar. Some of you will probably think that the Newcastle game's actually harder, so that switch from Diaz to Foden is quite hard to do, but one of the reasons I like the look of Foden, and for any of you with Mahrez, you might want to consider possibly moving him on, is I think his minutes expectations are going to be quite high again this season. He's not nailed on, right? He's not going to start every single game. Not many players do for Man City, but when he does start, he puts up very good underlying numbers like expected goals, expected assists. And I think I was a little bit worried because in the Community Shield, Grealish started on the left and Mahrez was on the right. And then when Foden came on, he came on to play on that left-hand side. So I was a bit worried that him and Grealish might share minutes. But the fact he then started on the right against West Ham gives me quite a lot of hope that Pep is going to try and get him in that team as often as he can, either on the right instead of Mahrez or possibly on the left instead of Grealish. Now, again, there's always risk with Man City players. I'm not saying you get him in, he definitely starts against Bournemouth, but the fact that he started multiple games in a row last year and did it quite often throughout the season is surely a good sign. So if you are someone that wants to take maybe a slight risk with someone like Foden, I don't even know how risky he really is, then Bournemouth at home and also having Nottingham Forest at home in the next 4 game weeks is a pretty good shout. For me, it's quite difficult because I'm not sure I want to get rid of Diaz after just 1 game week, but I love Phil Foden. I think he starts more than people realise, always puts up great numbers, and is also a great price as well. So I've added Bamford to the watch list. I was quite impressed with how he and Leeds played. Bamford in particular obviously missed a lot of last season through injury, so there was maybe some fitness concerns, but I thought he looked quite sharp. And obviously pre-season's not been ideal. It's been a little bit shorter than normal for a lot of teams. Like Man City, for example, only played a couple of games. But Leeds I thought looked good. They caused Wolves some problems. And Bamford was maybe a little bit unlucky to only come away with an assist. He could have easily had a goal. There was a header that was saved from Sarr. Leeds should have got a penalty as well. Goalkeepers are just way too protected. Sarr should have been given a penalty again, so Bamford would have likely taken that as well. So things look pretty good. Southampton away is a really good fixture as well. I think for anyone that's looking to maybe bring him in, the fact that they played Chelsea in Game Week 3 probably means he's a wait and see, and we can possibly look at him from maybe Game Week 4 onwards. Brighton, Everton, Brentford and Nottingham Forest is not a bad run of fixtures, but if you were looking for a new forward, I don't think this is the worst week to bring him in. Chelsea's not ideal, but Southampton's a really good game. One thing I would say maybe, and this is why I like using stats, my eye test tells me that Leeds were pretty good, Bamford was decent, maybe could have got more returns, but his expected goals per 90 were only 0.2. That's quite low from what we expect from him. Obviously, it's just 1 game, right? We don't want to read too much into it, but it's maybe worth keeping an eye on over the next few games. So giving him until Game Week 4 might be the best play. The other thing which is definitely worth noting is 7.5 million for a forward is still a fairly tricky price point, because for 0.5 million more you've got Jesus. A lot of people are looking at Nunez. A lot of people will also have one of Kane or Haaland, and then unless you're on a 3 up front strategy, it probably takes a bit of restructuring. So again, these aren't players to necessarily transfer in straight away, but are players that I want to keep an eye on, and I'm not ruling out going to a 3 forward strategy where I'm playing them every single week. There's still a lot of value in midfield, of course, but I think maybe 4-3-3 instead of 4-4-2 could be viable, because there's quite a few forwards that look good in Game Week 1, right? And we're going to take a look at my bigger overall watch list later on in this video. So yeah, I like Bamford. Keep an eye on those stats. Keep an eye on how Leeds do over the next couple of games. 7.5 still a tricky price point, but I thought he looked sharp. He'll be on penalties, should get good minutes, and has in the past performed very well in that Leeds side. So I'm really glad I put at least one £8 million midfielder into my Game Week 1 squad, because I've already talked about Foden. Now we're talking about Kulusevski as well. And I did have him quite low down the rankings in my £8 million midfielder video. That was kind of hopeful that Man City midfielders would get minutes. But like I said in that, if you weren't sure, then Kulusevski could definitely move up the list a little bit. And I probably let the Richarlison doubts creep into my mind too much as well. For what it's worth, I think Son, Kane and Kulusevski are going to be the regular front three. I do think Richarlison is mostly going to be a squad player. Obviously, we've not seen how he will impact the minutes of those three players yet, because he was suspended for Game Week 1, and probably Chelsea away is not the greatest game to use for what might happen regularly throughout the season in the easier games. But I think Kulusevski is going to get regular starts, and he basically picked up where he left off last year, which is ticking over pretty regularly with goals and assists, right? And Southampton's obviously a great game. Chelsea away is going to be much more difficult. But I think what he adds to that Spurs front three means he's going to get those regular starts. And Wolves, Forest, West Ham away is probably the most tricky one out of these four. And Fulham are home after Chelsea looks pretty good. So again, whether I would go from Diaz to Kulusevski in Game Week 2, probably not, right? Chelsea away is going to be difficult. But the next four fixtures all look pretty good. And it might be the case that some people, and maybe myself, if we don't want to go for Nunez, actually look to get a second £8 million midfielder into our squad. So eyes firmly on Kulusevski. Let's see how Richarlison impacts his minutes. I don't think it's going to be that much. And if he continues to tick over with this many goals and assists for that price, he's going to be a great option. So for the watchlist videos this year, I've added this table. Please do let me know in the comments below if you find it useful. The idea would be that as I talk about more and more players every single week, only those players would be on this table. And then, for example, if I've put Bamford on my Game Week 1 watch list and he's on this table in Game Week 4, I can talk about whether he's now likely to come off because the fixtures are about to get bad. I just don't have a place for him and therefore he's not on the watch list. For Game Week 1, I've only talked about 4 players. So I've just picked a bunch of players who maybe caught the eye in Game Week 1 or absolutely didn't, like Havertz, for example. And obviously green kind of represents, okay, they're really good options. If you haven't got them, you could still look at buying them. Blue kind of similar, but maybe there's something to be cautious about, either fixtures or minutes. So for Saliba and Grealish, for example, will they continue to get starts every single week? And then red are players that doesn't mean you have to sell them, but I don't think I'd necessarily buy right now. So Neto and Bailey are definitely on there, Cucurella and Cash for sure, and Havertz I don't think look great either. So with this table, like I said, the idea is just to add my watch list players every week. As the table gets bigger, I'll talk about them, because I think sometimes last season I'd put a player on a watch list video one week and then I didn't bring them in, and I wanted to talk about them again in another video, but because they were on a previous one I couldn't do that. But with this table, it keeps it kind of up to date. Those players don't just get forgotten about, and I'm not going to go through every single one of these, but it gives you a good idea of what my current thinking is. So Mitrovic, for example, looked really good, although I would say his fixtures aren't great. Aronson, another Leeds player like Bamford that caught the eye. He might be our route out from Neto if we want to sell Neto in a couple of weeks. So yeah, lots of players caught the eye. Loads of really good defenders. Trent and Robertson's still great despite the blank in Game Week 1. James and Cancelo getting bonus points even though they got yellow cards and no attacking returns. Chilwell started. That was good to see. Zinchenko was really attacking as well. I like that. And Kyle Walker, if he keeps his place for $5 million, is going to be a great option to have a second City defender as well. So let me know what you think about that table. Like I said, I'm not going to go through every player, but I think it could be useful. So there you go. There are some of my watch list players. Let me know in the comments below, who do you have your eye on already? Don't panic if there's some players that I've not spoken about. There's loads more videos to come this week. I'll try and cover as much as I can. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. Links to follow me in the description below. That's where I usually ask for questions for the Game Week preview. But again, loads of videos to come, loads of players to talk about. Let me know in the comments below who has caught your eye for Game Week 1. Have you already made the Kane to Haaland move before the price changes as well? I'd be really interested to know that. If you haven't checked out Fantasy Football Scout, link at the top of the description below. You can sign up to become a premium member. Otherwise, I'll catch you tomorrow for another video.